Welcome to Ncast, the podcast from FinOps. Each week, we'll explore the world of cloud cost management, the latest in AWS optimization, and getting practical about your FinOps journey. Join us as we dive deep into the latest trends, tools, and best practices, while having conversations with leaders and luminaries who are innovating on the front lines. Our goal is to provide value to the community through insights and practical advice that will help you to achieve your FinOps goals. So whether you're in engineering, leadership, finance, or a cloud professional, this is the place for you. Sit back, relax, and get ready to join the conversation on Ncast. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us again today. I'm joined today by Tim Cassell, and Tim is a great colleague, a great friend. I love our conversations, and he's an absolute expert in FinOps, cost optimization. I would say a foremost expert, and so I'm really excited to have him on today. Foremost. So Tim, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, and I'm Tim. I run the product over here at FinOps. And I don't know, I've been in this space, or at least in the, the data center space, the cloud space, for a very long time. And, 13 plus years ago when we discovered AWS and the power of what you can do from an innovation and just from instead of building out big ass data centers and stuff like that. And it was a very powerful thing. So I've been involved, with a major player in this space since for about 13 years. And so I've had a chance to see a lot of this evolution head, and I'm excited about where this is actually going. And that's why, James and I thought we'd have a little chit chat, what we think is going to be happening in the future.
The future episode. Yeah. One other thing, Tim is like the god of cost and usage reports. I hate to plug you there, but I think no one, I will challenge people to know cost and usage reports from AWS better than Tim does. Today we're going to take a trip into the future, and we're going to talk about where this FinOps thing, this cloud cost optimization thing is headed. The landscape is shifting quickly, and we're going to give you some opinions about, what we think the trends are going to be and where the technology is going to go and how teams are going to operate. But to start it off, I just want to hear from you, Tim. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges that the teams face in their FinOps journey today?
It's an interesting question, right? It definitely varies based off the size and the types of companies out there. But it seems like the basics are still the visibility. How do you track? How do you forecast? How do you, give people accountability? Still seems to be a big issue out there. Being able to, everybody's in this sort of, the economy today, right, is trying to figure out how to cut their costs. And so there's a lot of these commitments that are being done. Not sure most people really understand what they actually mean, and what they're doing to the future on them. I think we have a solution that kind of helps customers, not have to worry about that. But that's sort of where it is today. I think there's a lot of still these, what I call the dot one, I guess, visibility platforms. There's a lot of players out there now that are taking sort of point solutions on point sort of things, added some AI in there to help from a cost optimization standpoint, or even maybe some forecasting and all that kind of shit. Sorry, you're going to hear my West Virginia language come out a lot.
That's why we do podcasts.
Yeah, exactly. But when I think of the future, if you've been under a rock, we've seen some very impactful things over the last 3 years, from the COVID to the huge huge increase into spend, and everybody's life seemed like it was great during the whole COVID thing, and then all of a sudden the economy drops. The whole, I like to joke around with all my crypto people, but we've seen that market thing. But I think the greatest thing that I haven't seen, um, the impact and what it's doing to major companies and making them pivot, is the whole AI thing, right? That, the chat GPT thing that came out, and how that's changed a lot of how people think and how we're actually going to be working in the future, right? Um,
It's a changed landscape, right?
yeah,
I hear people all the time in the fear zone about Chat GPT and what it's going to do to their job, content creators, um, developers, engineers are talking about, will I be writing code? Somebody asked me the other day if I recommended that their kids study computer science because maybe computers will be writing all the code in the future. And my answer is always the same. You should not be shying away from this stuff, right? If you're not leading the conversation about how are we going to use AI and how are we going to, even Chat GPT, how can we use it in our day-to-day jobs to increase our productivity, then you're missing the mark because somebody else is going to have that conversation.
yeah, and I think it impacts, like, I used to joke around a lot. It's like, as much as Amazon tries to simplify things, right? Or they add new services, or what they think is simplified, they actually make it more complex. And it makes, I'm like, that's why I have a job, right?
Yeah, Amazon, if we're listening, we love you.
Yeah, I mean, it's all this complexity underneath the covers is what we're trying to kind of help our customers with. But I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, it's like this, all the work that we do, it's eventually all going to be AI, right? So instead of everybody going off and, doing these, I love recommendations, right? I was like, all these recommendations for freaking Jira tickets, right? That's not the future. Future is actually going to be doing it, right? It's going to take all these inputs. They're going to be coordinated now, right? So it's not going to be, hey, I do some right sizing, I do some amendments, and then, then I rinse and repeat, right?
Right.
And then maybe I got some, I got these commitments, I right size something, and then, I've gone below my commitments. Like, all that math behind the scenes, or that you have to do today, that's going to be gone, right? And
Right.
so, I am so excited about the product that, that we're on the cusp of releasing, where it is just taking all those inputs and making those decisions based off of, where you set, and try to get the best price point for usage in our new NKS solution. So I see that as, that's just the tip of the iceberg of
Right.
where this thing is heading. Not just
The
from a
status is
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
waterfall. It's sort of when I was sorry, I had to just throw that in there. When I heard you talking about these big planning exercises, it's like it reminds me of the days, and I am that old, of waterfall of software development, right?
yeah,
We're gathering requirements, and at the end of this big black box out comes some release that may or may not look anything like what you started out to build, right? And so we spent so much time going through these movements of continuous delivery and DevOps movements, right? To automate everything. And it just feels like if that's not the same future that we're headed to in continuous cost optimization, then what is it,
yeah. And I was thinking about this before our podcast today. It's like, I'm so against it, right? So I'm so against a commitment, because like I said, I build some of the largest data centers in the world, and I remember what that was like, and all the planning, and basically focusing. When we think about where I was at, we were focused on 1 hour out of the year, right? And building all this capacity out there. And so when I moved into the startup, that turned out to be, just look up a big brand. It's one of these big brands now. And we discovered what we could do with the cloud and the innovation and being able to really move fast and then take advantage of, I started off as an engineer and then, learned how to do all this pricing stuff underneath cover. It was just so powerful. And you have such a direct line to the bottom line or to, or to the, like I said, the P&L or, the cost of goods sold, right? It's like you can get your margins out of this by how you do infrastructure, which was a totally different game than it was in the data center days, right?
Right.
Now, with all that said, right, there's a lot of work associated to that. And if you're not used to doing that and you're not cloud native and you're migrating to the cloud, sometimes I almost wonder, they go off, they do EVPs, they do a bunch of commitments, right? So they're looking for more, they want to get, still do that same negotiations, right? I mean, like
Plans their way to the
plan away,
price.
right,
Right.
to the lowest price, negotiate, right? But they're still making a commitment. And so what they end up doing is they're handcuffing their ability. And so then I was starting to wonder, it's like, well, is it worth the squeeze, right? So if they went to more of this AI and more variable and took advantage of it and weren't so afraid of it, right? Is the reporting, is the understanding of it costing more than the actual savings are? Does that make sense?
Right. So there's always an opportunity cost, right?
Yeah. And so just kind of was thinking through that. Is that part of the issue within the organization? But either way, it's my feeling of where this is heading, this concept of commitments and stuff like that, it will still be there, but you know, hopefully it's not where it's locking you into something where you can't take advantage of the
Right.
innovation, right? So if you take some of these companies out there today, right? I mean, they're in there 3, 5 years, right? This thing just happened,
Right.
right? And so what are you going to do now?
Right.
You're
How are you going to innovate on top of that?
how are you going to go on top of that, right? It's like you've already made these crazy commitments. So, and that's why here at FinOps, I mean, what we believe, right? We talk about it all the time is, I want to sell freedom. I want freedom of innovation. I want to get you the best price. I want to make sure that you're constantly running on the best price. But my ultimate goal is, with these things that we do, is to give you the freedom to adjust, the freedom to move, right? The freedom to take advantage of new things, to fail fast, right? Innovate new signs or, use different services out there. That's what we're trying to sell and allow companies to take advantage of that. It'll be the companies that were able to do this will be the companies that'll make it in the future, at least in my opinion, right?
So the
I mean, if you can make Google blink, right? Which is basically what's happened this time around with the chat GPT. It's like, what's next, right?
What's next?
So,
Yeah. So, the landscape is changing. Well, for a long time, we talked about commitments and then savings plans. Oh, this is the easy button. So I'm going to commit to this thing. And then, spot market, that's complicated. I'm afraid of termination. And then what happens is enterprises of any scale get locked into all different variations of that. And I read the media, I read the blogs, it's spot is may not be the cheapest option today. It may be tomorrow. That's the nature of spot, right?
mm-hmm.
And so how do you see the landscape changing moving forward?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a good example, but it's just like in larger organizations, these centralized hubs, right? And like I said, I'm not saying they're bad, but if you're making some of these decisions, so for example, right, concept of moving it down to accountability, right, to people that are doing it, and you maybe have a centralized teams that are, looking at the aggregate usage and making commitments, and then all of a sudden you're also sending recommendations down for right sizing, or a team goes off and they want to do some spot stuff, right? If that's not all coordinated, right, you're going to make individual decisions will have an impact that they think they may actually be decreasing cost, but they actually probably are increasing because they're not taking account of something that was sort of done underneath the covers from a commitment standpoint.
Right.
And like I said, is the future, right? And that's what we're focused on here at NOps is understanding all those different layers to ensure that if you have commitments, um, and you decide to go to spot, we're not going to pick a spot instance because that maybe that commitment goes uncovered,
Right.
right? Because right, and so it's a lot of this type of coordination, and then also like it's my favorite thing, right, is our shared safe risk free commitment, right? Is well now I'm going to give you that discount, but now you're not responsible for that commitment long term, right? So if you use
Right.
it, it's great.
Hey.
If you don't, you get your money back. And so now you really release this freedom to allow you to take advantage of the cloud and the best price point.
Right. I heard you talk about pushing into individual accountability, like pushing accountability out to the micro level. And that seems to be the fundamental concept of unit economics. Here's the controversial topic is, if all of this is quite so centralized, but we want to have this micro accountability, that there does seem to be some conflict unless you have tools that are able to make decisions in real time, not forecasted 3 months ahead. It's got to be, what is the most cost optimal option for my workload at this second, right? So that's the only way to know.
Right.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel the future is going. And that's something that we're leading into very, very hard. Right. And then, even if you have some of these things that kind of block us from being able to take advantage of it, we're going to make sure that you don't go over those particular commitments that you may already have out there. Right. But the ultimate goal is to allow that freedom to get it down to, when it's happening, be on the right thing at the right time. Right. And it's just coordinating all these things together to ensure that, that you're making the right decisions. So,
well, and it seems sort of a fool's game to think with the markets that give accessibility to some of these shorter term commitments. Maybe, the idea is we shouldn't commit so far out, but when you're talking about 2-month commitments, 3 months of commitments, right? And you've got an organization of any scale, no human could possibly manage that, right? No, and we know people who manage them in spreadsheets, but I'll tell you, it's painful.
yeah, like I said, you're doing it. Like I said, it's like if this economy and this, the last three hasn't taught you is being flexible is where you want to be, and to be able to pivot quickly. I don't know what else can teach you that. And so I think that the companies that are able to lean into this and be able to do this will be the ones that will see very successful in the future as it relates to this, right?
Okay.
Okay, so because everybody's, like I said, everybody's like, cut costs, cut costs. I mean, if you've already handcuffed me, how am I going to cut much more?
It's going to take us a year to get costs, or until my open search RI expires, right? That's not that's not going to
special deal where you're going to go, beg and plead Amazon to cancel them, right? I mean, where else are you going to get it?
Right.
So,
right. And then try to stay on top of innovation, right? Oh yeah, my job is to innovate. It's not to figure out how to get myself out of a commitment that somebody else made.
Yeah, I mean, all the different options, right? Like I said, it's like, it's gonna need it's got to be AI. It's got to be making those decisions, and that's definitely where it's heading. And it can't just be point solutions, right? I think what we're seeing is a lot of point solutions out there right now, right? It's got to be.
Oh yeah, and I do. I've been listening, and I see the way that they're packaged together right now. It's reserve distance point solution. It's Kubernetes point solution. It's with Spot point solution. It's Kubernetes cost allocation point solution. I'm not coming for anyone, but you're cobbling it all together. And then when you look out there, it's like, wait, this stuff is all interrelated, right? You can't make a spot decision without impacting your ROI decision. You can't just dump all this stuff on top of each other, because where the true decisions are made are where the data is centralized, right? If you can't centralize all that data, it's all for naught.
Yeah.
All right. So how does AI impact cost allocation and forecasting? We've talked a lot about automation, but what's the future there?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much, at least, it's going to be able to take all that information also, right, and be able to give a better type of forecast, right? So the ultimate goal for most people is they just, we have a lot of customers out there. It's like they struggle with the variability, right? And it's like all they're looking for is something that gives them some sort of predictability, and like I said, there's the more information, the more data that you have it going in the AI, the better predictions they can make for the future, right? And so that's definitely going to be there. Ideally, a lot of auto allocation, right? I think
There you go.
you know what I mean. That's sort of the future. Not sure how that's going to work too much, but I think it's definitely a doable thing. I think the current way that people are doing it, there's just too many chances for just to be incorrect, or it changes, right?
Right, because if your rule is static, right? If you make a static rule, I've had this happen in my own show backs, right? Oh, whoops, something is tagged in a way that I didn't expect it. Now all of a sudden this cost is going up, and I'm yelling at somebody on the team, where you're spending too much on test EC2s or whatever. And the actuality is that the cost was coming from, a way out cluster over there, because there's a rule that doesn't change. I mean, those rules are
it's just got and be dynamic, much more dynamic, right? It's like, just take simple things, right? I mean, the way I think I want to allocate it today, right, may be different than what I want to do tomorrow, right? Or organizations reorg all the time, product lines change, right? Teams, we've seen a bunch of layoffs and flattening of stuff, right? So things are changing. So you got to be able to, adapt and be able to do that. I do see it more outside of the clouds, right? Of, being able to have a different system that's doing all that allocation. That's what I definitely see. Because, I think there's just certain limitations that each of these clouds have when it comes to the tagging mechanism, and how, like I said, it's like you tag a resource, but it only counts the moment that you get tagged, for example, right? You kind of want to have that backloaded, or you want to adjust those. So, like I said, if you more dynamic, more automated kind of stuff, that's to me, it's outside that type of system.
Yeah, I mean, I see a future where there's a lot more interaction between your automation and your visibility tooling, right? I mean, being able to prioritize savings in a specific show app category, right? Give this, I need to dial this one up. Show me the opportunities, right? And let's attack that, because that's sometimes the way that it works. You have like a squeaky wheel that you have to take care of more quickly.
Yeah.
What about, let's just jump over to something else. When I think of the future, I think of shifting left in the development process.
Yeah.
What are the trends that are going to help teams to operationalize around this stuff?
Right. I mean, that's a lot of discussion that we're having right now, right? Trying to move. I mean, I always laugh. I go, the security guys have figured this out. Why can't us cost guys figure this out?
Right.
You know what I mean? And so the sooner we can help make those decisions earlier, before they hit the world, right? It's easier to fix on the locally on a laptop than it is once it's out there. And so we are definitely looking at different ways of making those changes automatically. I mean, it all comes down to is, when we think about our recommendations, all of ours have to be automated and got to be consumed by an engineer. So to us,
Right.
we tackle, we're tackling getting an engineer to do anything as our number one thing, and looking at ways to make that easier to consume on their behalf, right? It all comes
So you're
down to,
telling me that
yeah,
ClickOps automation doesn't work? Right? So
exactly.
we have this big trend towards if the structure is code, and then you can go and build a million lambdas to go and fix stuff, but the Terraform code's just going to change it right back. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I also think of it as like this living, breathing organism, right? I use infrastructure as code as like in a net strip, right? That's what gets me started. But once the activity hits, right, it's living, it's breathing, it's going right, it's going down, right? So to me is you want to make sure that whatever changes or how the system's adapting makes it back to the init, so you don't start from scratch again. But I think
Right.
a lot of the trends will be, living, breathing in your, like I said, like what we're building with the, yes, I mean, putting that in code, right? Those decisions are being made in real time, right? And so, um, that to me is more the trend, but you want to make sure that, for some of this more static stuff is to make sure that it gets back before it goes back, make those changes there before it gets
Right.
taken.
Well, and without, you could go and make all the changes you want, but then you get into a pile of Jira tickets, right? Okay, I'm going to fix this now. And then I'm going to make a backlog of, hey, DevOps team, I know you have real work to do, but can you go reconfigure these 7,826 EBS volumes?
James knows me and Jira.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's why if you can push it straight to get, then,
Yeah.
then you circumvent the need for somebody to have something hanging over their head because it goes right into their workflow.
Right.
Jira integration, anybody can do that. But if it just creates a pile of tickets, then it's just, this massive pile of work. I mean,
But
watch any team from a SOC 2 audit. Drew, watch any team go through a SOC 2 audit, and you'll know the panic of, I've only got to resolve 3,000 Jira tickets before, next Thursday.
right.
Right. But that there is a philosophy to it, right? I mean, sure, we have to write things down. I'll be your foil on it a little bit, but I can't disagree. There's a balance there. And if it's a million little tasks, right?
Yeah.
That then, what's the effort that goes into that? You got it right. I think that the key point is that security teams have figured this out, right?
Well, yeah. I
And
mean, where it's automatically, like I said, is they have figured out how to do this, do the assessment of the particular, it could be whatever security thing they're doing, right? It could be
right,
just, making sure there's no vulnerabilities in there or whatever it is, but it's happening at the point, that they're developing or go on the check-in. So we're ensuring as close as they possibly can that it's not getting out there, right? And
well,
so they've kind of figured this thing out. And so if you can do it there, why can't you do it with not provisioning the wrong shit, right?
right. Well, and the trend. I mean, let's talk about the trend. We went very far into, well, we call it infrastructure as code, but yeah, back in the old days, we called it configuration management, right? Right. So you keep going so far into configuration management, and then you realize that how long is it going to take you to circle back and reconsider that configuration? And I don't care if it's your carpenter provisioner. I don't care if it's your EBS storage volume type. I don't care if it's your EC2 instance type. Like, sure, well, I'm very well acquainted with the well-architected framework, and it says we ought to go back and consider that. Do you understand how many computers I have? There's a lot of work to do. So, even if I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it's more than just static. The security community has gotten very good at static analysis.
Yeah.
It's got to be dynamic. You have to be able to say, this resource way out there that Terraform controls, right? That thing needs a change. And I can't just know it, or I can't just open a Jira ticket. It's got to go all the way back to the infrastructure as code that manages it. And that's by some rights trickier than it may sound.
Right. As we are finding out.
Right. As it burbles in the lab,
Yeah.
That's the moonshot, right? Is to be fully integrated from like beginning to end. And yes, shift left is great, but then there's this reconsideration stuff.
Yeah. I mean, those two words, right? It's pretty complex, right? As we're finding out, right? I mean, and so, but, we were, like I said, our company focusing on how to get engineers to actually consume this stuff, right? That is what we focus on, right?
That's the thesis statement.
Yeah, that is what we're trying to get done. And so, yeah, I always like to say it's one cell in it's one cell in an Excel spreadsheet, but that thing is the most, that's possibly the most complex thing that we're trying to do. And the different variations and, how all that kind of stuff works, right? But it is something we'll be able to figure out. That's what I love about working here at FinOps, right?
I know.
We're trying to tackle some very hard problems, right? And that's exciting, right? It's, like I said, it's like you go to that FinOps thing and that getting engineers and doing something, right? It's like, clown there.
It's the biggest, and it's
all I hear is the culture square. I want to hear is like, come on, you got to attack it different. How do you
right? How do you attack it?
Yeah.
It gives us identity, doesn't it? Right? Like that's why I get more and more excited. The more innovation that we roll out of this engine, because we have focus, right? We know what the mission is, and the mission is making it easy for engineers to take action, and not just, giving them the right data. You have to show your work, right? That's a Timism. We have to show our work, right?
Yeah.
But it's also giving them tools where they don't have to think about things that a data platform and the AI could do better than and faster, and free up their time and make them more productive and make them happier, right?
Right. I mean, think about we both, I'm going to date myself too, right? But I mean, we all carried that pager, right? We know what it's like to manage infrastructure at scale, right? We know that, I don't want that damn page, right? I mean, I spent 7 years of my life where I had to carry my laptop nowhere where it was on and had to be online within 2 minutes to figure out how to save, millions and millions of dollars per second, right? And so when we're mucking with infrastructure, right, and we're talking about cost, right, is to an engineer sometimes, that the cost of an outage is insane, right?
Correct.
It's insane. And so to them, you may make a recommendation, right, and then the data may look all good, right, and they're always going to be a little hesitant because, what if something goes wrong, right? They're the ones on the hook to do it, right? And so you got to solve that fear, right? We talk about spot, right? We take that simple one, right? It's like, well, everybody thinks it's like it's the interruption, right? Well, okay, I get that, right? Well, what if we can get rid of that part, right? What if I just get rid of that? Would you then do it, right?
Right.
And so instead of fighting, sort of, tackle that particular issue, right? And so what if I can predict that well in advance before it actually happens, and you make the change? And well, guess what? You're going to get more and more folks that are going to be able to do that, right? Um,
Right.
but when you just come in and you say, "Yeah, I get 2 minutes," my first thing is, "I ain't worth I ain't worth the
Right.
sweet."
It's not worth missing Thanksgiving dinner, which has happened, right? I got on the call, sitting at dinner with grandma and the nephews, nieces, and all this.
Oh yeah,
It's
you're on it.
that call, the dreaded, the dread. It's not even a call, I mean, it's pager duty or whatever tool we're using at that time, right? And then you got to get
You're on that set call and you got to get the production line thing back up, right? And
yeah,
it's high pressure, intense stuff. And so, you know, so you have to have that empathy for that engineer. And that's what I think, that we build a team that understands that. And so it's not just, hey, I throw you, just throwing a bunch of recommendations and not understanding what they're actually going through, right? You're just not going to get that. You're not going to get them to consume it, right? And so if you can start to tackle what the real fears are, right? And making that so they're not going to, this system is always going to be reliable and available and all those kind of things, then you can get cost any day of the week.
that's true, right? If you and everything is a matter of time and engineering, and so if that's the system you need to engineer it, then by golly, that's what we have to do, and we have to talk about cost optimization as maybe not just a first class citizen, but you got to put it up there with security and operations and reliability and all those things, because if not, it's always going to be punitive, and you're always going to be punished. You're going to be rewarded for those nines. You got 5 of them. You're good engineer, and then you're going to get yelled at for the cost of what it takes to get there.
To get there. And so there's a balance, right? And that's what we're trying to help with that particular balance, and
Right.
taking into account that, saving a few bucks on, like we use those terms, it's got to be worth the squeeze, man. Right. And so, you know, you know, I'll use these, like, especially for some of our small, it's like, man, you dump $50,000 at something in the people time, try to save $100, right? I mean, that makes like 0 cents, right? And so kind of picking and choosing, but I think that with the AI movement and being able to take all those different things, take all the different levers of cost and being able to look at them as one thing and be able to make decisions based off all of that, that is the future, right?
Okay.
And so it's not these, the standard playbook concept, right? Is rethink the standard playbook, right? And things in different orders. And that's what we're trying to do here to help our customers.
All right.
It's good stuff.
It's good stuff, and we did just recently kind of tease to the world. We're allowing people to sign up for the NGS early access. Boom. There's a line. There's a line because people get this, right? That there are some great tools out there. We had the Carpenter team on last week.
Yeah.
That was awesome, right? People are talking about it because we can start to think about doing things differently. Well, if I pick any dimension of EC2 instance, and as the Carpenter team said, that they said, start treating your application as a first class citizen, right? Like let the application tell the system what infrastructure it needs, not trying to fit my an application on the infrastructure I already had. Wasn't that the promise of the cloud, right? But so
yeah, and I feel like it's, over my 13 years, I've seen a lot of change in AWS, right? And it's like, and I always go back, I'm a history guy, right? So I you ever hear me, right? I'm like, there's this many instances, right, over this many years, over this many regions. But it's that even that concept of even the reserved instances, man, they had this concept way back in the day that they went away from, and it was light, medium, and heavies. And it literally does what currently what we're doing with our risk-free, where we're basically taking the commitment away, right? It was pretty much that, right? So you could have workloads where, you know, if you average things up, there's certain amount of workloads, right, that are constantly running, right? And so those were the ones you would buy these heavies, right? And so what a heavy, and so if you guys ever look at a cost of usage report and you see RIs and they say heavy, that's where it comes from.
Box usage heavy.
Right. And it was called heavy. And then they had a constant. So think of that as your 100%, kind of utilization concept, right? But if you didn't use it, you still paid for it, right? Then they had mediums, right? So you would throw down a little bit of an upfront, and you'd have this hourly effective rate, right? Now, if you didn't use it, guess what? You didn't pay for that effective rate, right? And so you could work workloads between, I forget what these numbers said, no one quote me on this, but it was like, if you could do somewhere, it was like 70% utilization to maybe 30-ish or so, right? And so if you had work, having utilization in those categories, you would buy a medium, right? And so, and then you had lights, man. I mean, you could go down to like 14% utilization. So you had all these kind of pricing plans to be able to do what our system currently does, right? They went away from that. And I don't know why they did. I think there was a lot of, pressure of the other clouds because they were starting, the Azures of the world. No one remembers there used to be HP out there. They sold it like the traditional way, which is, we bought, made these commitments and then got these discounts and stuff like that. And so Amazon went straight heavy and so, and then the savings plan thing, right? It's like, like I said, they tried to simplify that, make these savings plans, and they just made it more complex, right? If someone can actually, I've dug so much into those things. I know exactly how these things work, right? It's like, it's the biggest black box. Savings giving it out there that people have no idea how they actually work. So, anyway,
Well,
I think, once again, that's what got me a job. But, I have a feeling, I'm going to have to be looking for new work with all this AI. So I'll make all these decisions.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I think your future is secure and by the way, if a computer wants to try and do my job, then all right, fine. I'll
There'll be something else.
Go hang out on my boat.
No, I don't.
Exactly. All right. Well, Tim, this has been great. We all have great conversations together, and we got plenty of time to have many more. Listeners out there, head over and check out the NKS page if you want to see how all of this stuff is coming together and what we're talking about with this sort of perfect balance and using AI to push you into the most cost optimal solution or the most cost optimal option at any given point, because this stuff is becoming a reality and there's just so much more to come.
It's pretty exciting.
It is exciting. We're excited about it. And I think this every time, if there's somebody that's still listening to this, oh my gosh, they're like as nerdy as we are about this stuff. So Pam, this has been great. Yeah, I think we'll come on and we'll get real specific about this AI and NKS stuff in a future episode. So this has just been sort of our where's it going, and I think that the future is good. As long as people accept it, as long as people embrace the power of what can be cut, what's possible. Cool. Well, that's it. Thanks for tuning in to Ncast. We hope you enjoyed the episode. As you can tell, we love to geek out on all things cloud optimization. If you have any questions or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. You can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram, or just shoot us an email at ncast@enops.io. If you'd like to learn more about the continuing innovation over at FinOps or about our free FinOps platform where you never pay anything unless you save money, check us out over at www.enops.io.